Good evening, everyone. Welcome to DeKalb County Board of Zoning Appeals. Roll call, please.
Yes. Frank Pulver,
Here.
Mary Deal. Here. Jason Carnahan,
Here.
Larry Williams.
Here.
Roy Walker.
Here.
Andrew Cruz,
Here.
Chris Gallmer.
Here.
Meredith Wright. Here.
Thank you. Approval of minutes, February 12th, 2024. Motion to approve.
So moved.
Second. Thank you.
Aye.
Old business. Edition 24-02.
All right, so this is a continuance of the DeKalb #1 Amish School and Cemetery. Jesse's Aaron Martin Miller requesting a use variance to allow for an Amish parochial school for up to 90 students. Property is located at 4366 County Road 64 in Auburn and is zoned A2 agricultural. So this is a continuance of the last meeting. I won't go through everything, maybe just the highlights. The site plan was revised and is in your packet, showing landscape buffer along County Road 43 and County Road 64, and a few shrubs on the back and sides of the property, and some within the parking area around there as well. Also, with an updated site plan showing the basketball court and the softball field, as well as the septic design that's on there as well. I believe Jesse and Martin met with some neighbors around there, and while with the last petition, if you guys remember, we did close the public hearing portion. I'd request that our president reopen the public hearing portion of that so we can get a quick update from Jesse and Martin, who are here, as well as there were some questions about, I don't know if it was Roy or Larry, who asked about like how an Amish school is created and citing that. Ben Schmucker is here to give a little information if you want to hear that as well. It's up to the board on what you want to hear tonight. But as with the last meeting, the direction from the board was for the Jesse and Martin to meet with the neighbors and come up with a landscape plan that would suffice for each of them. So with that, I'll answer any questions you have. I don't have any more information other than what was supplied to me, which was the updated site plan, for any more information than what we had from the last meeting. So it's up to the board president to reopen for public comment if you want, or questions between the board.
Any more questions for Chris? Okay, we'll open it up to the public meeting. Both for and against, obviously, but for the petitioner, I would like whoever wants to speak in regard to the other questions that we've had.
Martin, you or Jesse want to just give a quick update on when you had the meeting with the neighbors, what came out of that, kind of what you spoke to me about when you dropped off the updated site plan.
So we met with the Wellens considerations about
Blue lights on. Press the gray button.
Got it. We listened to their concerns and considerations about what they want to see in landscaping if the site is approved by the BZA. The Wellmans wanted pine trees along 43, which is what's on the site plan, and the Ross did not want pine trees. They want to see shade trees so they can see through the property. So we proposed it that way. I think their concern is they'd rather not have it there at all. But if you guys allow us to have a school there, this is what they would like to see in landscaping. That was kind of where we had ended up with at that meeting.
Is Jess Zaire here? Can you come to the podium, please? State your name and address.
Jesse Zaire, 4453, County Road 60, Auburn.
More to add to this?
Basically, what Martin said is the way I find it as well. I will state that we did have a good meeting with him. I thought we left in friendly terms, and I would hope and ask that the BZA would approve it like they did the cemetery. It's one of our things that we do as the Amish folks, and would really appreciate it if you could. Thank you.
Else?
Ben Schmucker, 12726 Parent Road, New Haven, Indiana. Good evening and greetings to all. I want to thank you for your interest to learn a little bit about the Indiana Amish school structure. And we have articles of agreements regarding the Indiana Amish parochial schools and the Department of Public Instructions signed 8/22/67 by the state and the deputy state superintendent, along with 7 members of the Amish communities across the state. I will share just a few of what's in the agreements. And a little about me. I've been involved with the school movement in the state since 1988. With growth today, we have 10 state representatives and 26 subcommittee men to hold responsibilities for the schools from various counties across the state. And in here you'll find we agree to use construction plans approved by the Department of Public Instructions, Administrative Building Council, and the State Fire Marshal under the existing state law. Importantly, along with that, our desires are to maintain our school properties year-round. We also agree to install state and county-approved well and septics. We agree to maintain 167 days of school with a 97% attendance and 5 hours of class time. We agree to graduate our students at age 15 and through the 8th grade. We are currently graduating at a 10th grade level through the CAT forms. That's the California Achievement Testing forms. We have a vocational plan in place for those not meeting these requirements. The State Executive Committee has, with counsel of the Brethren, has the authority to make modifications for the betterment of our school, which is the regulation and guideline booklet. Today, we currently have 292 schools, plus or minus, and approximately 11,000 children across the state attending these schools. Allen County currently has 10 schools with 977 students, and about 75 to 100 of those are DeKalb County residents. We plead for your approval of DeKalb Middle School, and we want to faithfully work with the DeKalb County government and the neighborhood. United will stand and divided will fall. And I would be happy to leave a map of our existing schools in Allen County and these with you if you so desire. If there's any other questions, I'll try to answer. Any other questions?
Neighbors in Allen County have any repercussions or complaints that you have to address very regular?
No, never. And across the state, I have never faced this situation. But again, we'll faithfully work with you and the neighborhood. Thank you.
Anyone else wish to speak? Did anyone wish to speak in opposition to the school?
Bettina Wellman, 6551 County Road 43, Auburn. I am here again tonight to state my family and I are in opposition for the school being built on the property located at 4366 County Road 64. I do want to thank Mr. Williams and Mrs. Deal for the extended time responding regarding this use variance request. I'm thankful you were both appointed to the board and took our opposing concerns into account. Unfortunately, the information I was able to obtain regarding property assessment and value is, one, it is difficult to find an appraiser willing to respond when they know it involves Amish and/or a BZA meeting. Secondly, it is difficult for an appraiser to get comps for such a property as ours due to the uniqueness of this property. Thirdly, a cemetery can have a negative impact on property value and cause limitation of increased buyers. And as stated earlier, per the recommendation of the last BZA meeting, we did meet with the petitioners on February 26th. It was a good meeting, we felt, and we asked them to consider another location for the school. And we did also discuss barriers. One of them being, in addition to trees or opposite of having trees, was a mound barrier. And we left with what I thought and the other members in my family was that we would have a second meeting with the petitioners prior to tonight's scheduled BZA, as you were requesting us to come tonight with an agreement with signatures. When we reached out to the petitioners after not hearing from them, we were told they were leaving it in the board's hands. Therefore, the second meeting did not happen, and hence you have no agreement with signatures. If the board chooses to approve the variance for the current property, we are requesting that the south side, which we spoke about in our meeting on February 26th, also be bordered, starting at the southeast corner, going 218 feet to the west. This allows for a break point and alignment to the Ross property. As mentioned, they prefer no barrier. The current plan shows starting on the east border, 126 feet from the center of County Road 64. Per the Highway Department, the setback required is 20 feet from center. Therefore, the east border would need an additional 110 feet of barrier. If trees are the determined and agreed upon barrier, this would indicate 22 trees for the south side and 31 for the east if planted 10 feet apart. My understanding from the February 26th meeting is the petitioners proposed planting trees 2 feet or smaller. We do not want to wait, nor should we be made to wait years for this border to provide visual and noise blockage. Per Fort Wayne Trees, excuse me, the growth rate of the proposed type of tree is 1 to 2 feet per year after it is established. To reach full maturity, it could take 20 to 40 years if 1 to 2 foot trees are planted. The smallest size that Fort Wayne Trees sells is 6 feet. We are requesting, again, if trees are the proposed border and agreed upon border, 6 to 8 foot trees be planted for the south and east borders. During the February 26th meeting, we also had expressed our preference for a large mound border. If this is more economical than 6 to 8 foot trees, we would agree to a mound border, 10 to 12 feet high, or a combination of a mound with trees. And it had been mentioned that evening, they would have to check with the community to see if anyone was building a pond to secure that dirt for a mound barrier. And after going home and discussing with my husband, we feel strongly enough about a barrier, whether that be not 1 to 2 foot trees, but more mature trees, or a mound barrier, that we would even entertain, and I don't know if this is the right place to discuss this, but we are here tonight for the barrier. We would entertain having an extension to our pond on our property if paid for by the Amish community, and utilize that dirt for the mound barrier instead of trees, if that's more economical. If trees are the determined barrier, I'm not sure how does the maintenance of this barrier work. So in other words, who is responsible to ensure that trees that don't take off and grow or deteriorate or die are replaced in order to maintain the compliance of the barrier? I think as last time, you just want to wait and give answers at the end? Okay. And also wondered if the barrier can be added as a condition, as well as the maintenance of a barrier being added as a condition. Whatever barrier is determined, we request it to be placed prior to occupancy. We would also like to request the petitioners to consider working with the county to pave County Road 43 from County Road 60 to County Road 68 due to the increased traffic that both the school and the cemetery would be bringing. As the petitioner did not hold the second meeting with us, we were not given the opportunity to discuss these ideas for the barrier and the road further with them. We would like to ask for a condition that no activity would take place after school hours or on the weekends on the school grounds. And I have concerns about how things are changing with this property use request. So if we had not expressed our concerns last month and the plan was approved the way it was drawn, could the petitioners have added the basketball court, softball field, and playground after the fact? I think it is important to have accurate and complete information. Therefore, I would ask that the application and the summary of facts be updated to reflect some information we were given on February 26th. And that would be to exchange the word typical, because it is not typical that cemeteries and schools are together, but it is now common with the newer schools being built. The end time for school hours is 2 p.m., not 3:30 p.m., although this now may need clarified as a 5-hour class time was discussed tonight. And no buses have been approved yet, so therefore vans would be added to the transportation. And the landscape buffer stated none, so I'm assuming that that is going to be corrected to whatever it is that is agreed upon. With the additional time we were given, I learned about the Freedom of Information Act. So I would like to know the process for using the FOIA Act to obtain access to the voice recording of the March 14th, 2022 meeting. Thank you.
If there's anyone else speaking, then fine. If not, then I can.
Anybody else? Okay. Your name and address, please.
My name's Andy Wagner. I live about a mile south, 4132 County Road 68. Look kind of right out to where the school's going to be, and been around the Amish community most of my life and around multiple schools of theirs, I guess. I'd be supportive of it because I like their atmosphere. I like the way that they bring up kids and instill education. not worried about a barrier or anything else. I don't mind watching little kids run around. I've got several of them myself. So I don't foresee a problem with having a school there for anybody that I know, at least in our area. If anything, it helps our property values. If you look, Harlan and the Amish community has some of the highest property values in Allen County. So if anything, it's going to cause our prices to go up. So I can't buy them. At least in my opinion, I'm not a realtor or appraiser. Everything I've seen suggests that it would be a positive feature for the area. I don't have any problem with the increased traffic. 68's already a really busy road. It would be nice if 43 is paved, but that just makes it a busier road for if she's worried about her property values. That would be the biggest concern I would have. I wouldn't worry about a barrier, but I'd be concerned with increased traffic. So, yeah, that's about all I got, unless you guys have any questions for me, but I don't see any problems with it. Look forward to having it around. Staple for the community.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Come on up, please.
I'm Janelle Roth, 4359 County Road 64, Auburn, Indiana. Right across the road from where the schoolhouse being presented is going to abide. My guess is that, as the gentleman stated, that we haven't had this sort of catastrophe in building a school. Might not. It may be the reason is that they have been placed in Amish communities. We are not an Amish community. We are exact opposite. And so as the board considers your decision, I would love for you to consider, what if that was your front yard? What if that's where, you had saved and worked hard to raise your family? As well as the Amish may consider, what if that was your community and we decided to place a public school there, or any school there, right in your front yard? It's just my ask that you consider.
Brandon Wellman, 4488 County Road 64. As the board has seen many times already, that there is quite an opposition to where this is being placed. I have no need to dive into that further. I guess I'd like to just talk through a couple of the points that were made this evening. As Mr. Schmucker had mentioned, and Mrs. Roth just touched on, is there hasn't been anywhere that he's experienced the opposition in the past. And as Mrs. Roth had brought to the podium, the reason for that is quite obvious. The school is being presented to be placed right in a place where it does not affect. Mr. Wagner, you're at least a mile away, is that correct?
You'll have to, sorry, you can't address people in the
Okay,
audience. You
I'm
have
sorry.
to direct the board.
Okay. As Mr. Wagner stated, his address is over a mile away from where the school is going to be. Each one of these gentlemen that came up here and spoke this evening from the petitioner, their addresses are also over a mile away. So those that are in opposition to, I guess, bring forth what Mr. Schmucker had said, is this is affecting the closer community that is present to where the school is placed. So as Mrs. Roth had mentioned, I ask that you guys would please consider that. Thank you.
Anyone else?
So the board can add conditions of approval. Like Mrs. Wellman said, you can add really any conditions you want, that their trees be planted at a certain height, the maintenance and you know, if trees die, they need to be replanted. That all needs to be added as a condition of approval, could even be added as a commitment. So if this property would happen to get sold and the school use would continue for another Amish community or school for that matter, that the buffering be maintained. That's something that the board would need to discuss and come up with some conditions on, but that's fine. As far as the paving of any county road, the BZA has no authority at all to require a county road to be maintained. That would be the highway department and the county commissioners. So I would strongly urge you to not even address paving that road, that they would need to go discuss that, if this would get approved, to the county commissioners and highway department. As far as no after-school activities, I don't know how you determine that as far as when the hours of the school are. I think that there's multiple schools out there. Every school has after-school activities that are directly next to the school or even some off the school property. So I just don't know how you would enforce that, require it. And then as far as the Freedom of Information Act, I gave Mrs. Wellman the link to the YouTube site for the video. Unfortunately, we don't have a recording of that. It's all on YouTube now. So, you know, that recording is linked. I sent that email to her along with her other requests that she sent emails on. So that Freedom of Information Act, she can request that from me as long as it's specific and meets what we're able to do. I'm happy to give that information to her. As far as revising the application or the staff report, that typically is not done. It'll be in the minutes, or if conditions of approval get added. Some of you have been on this board for a while that knows that, you know, when there is opposition, sometimes there's compromise that happens during these meetings, and it's just reflected in the minutes and on the conditions of approval as to how you got to that compromise and then what those new requirements are. So, you know, as far as the landscaping, 10 to 12 foot mounds, I think, are something that would need to go to the drainage board first for even some sort of approval.
Right.
That's changing, you know, the topography of that area 10 to 12 foot mounds at a slope that's manageable is probably going into a lot of the site. I'm not sure how. I know the ones around SDI are taller than 10 to 12 feet, but that just seems really tall for that area when there's not that anywhere else. So that's my suggestion is, you know, I did request that they have the meeting with neighbors. I would have liked to have saw something, you know, more kumbaya moment, I guess. But we are where we are. And
There's something in writing. Something in writing would have been handy, maybe.
yeah, and, you know, I don't know whose fault that is, but they all had a month to get together and come up with something. From my understanding, when I talked to Jesse and Martin, this is the plan they had come up with that was agreed upon by everybody. So if there's, you know, something more the BZA wants to see, I wouldn't recommend continuing it again rather than doing something different.
Well, we're looking at this more as a findings of fact type thing based on state statutes more than a pay reasonable regard to type thing like we do other times, right?
Yes, you're looking at findings of fact
Right.
for BZA versus you're on the Plan Commission, but these are very different than findings
Right.
of fact for the Plan
So
Commission.
this is
yes.
tied more to state statutes of.
They're all tied to state statutes, but
Not
this-
as much of our opinions and whatever, it's what the state statute allows or disallows is what we're supposed to be
you're
evaluating.
looking at your findings of fact.
But there's opinions as far as what you believe the facts are. Each side has kind of stated their position, and then you have to look at these state-required questions and answer
Right.
them for yourselves, and then as a board. Anything stated in here are just initial thoughts of the zoning administrator, Chris Galmer. They're not binding on you guys at all. We've gone through that before.
Right.
The proposed findings are just sort of like thought starters, but you guys have to make the ultimate decision. The zoning administrator doesn't decide. I'm saying this more for the public, but the zoning administrator doesn't control the findings.
Yep.
More comments? Cory?
That's a tough one as far as the border or the
Roy, can you
buff-
make sure your mic's on?
Got green, what do I need? Yeah, got a green light.
Thank you.
It's a tough one as far as the border or the buffer. A tall dirt mound will be too wide, it'll take up too much of their property. I mean, if you put a 2-to-1 slope, you're out there a long, long ways. So trees are gonna have to be the answer. I have no comprehension of the expense of that. They'd have to work through that part of it. If the buffer's the only thing we're arguing about, I think that it's surmountable, we can make it work, but, the hours of the school, I have no reason to limit that, or if you build a facility, you should have the right to use it. My opinion.
If we want barriers, we've talked shrubs, trees, slow-growing trees versus fast-growing trees, whatever. A mound of the size that was mentioned, I don't really, I don't understand why you would be a major undertaking. Plus you'd have draining issues. For me personally, I have a little problem understanding, what we're really for and what we're really against. We have, in DeKalb County, we have schools that are in the middle of nowhere. And it took up much, much, much larger than this. So, and as been said, we were hoping that there was more of a compromise, more discussion. Some of it, I'm sorry, I just have a hard time understanding all of the negativity. Anything changes in your neighborhood, I would be concerned too, in my own neighborhood. But I have a hard time seeing the level of negativity towards this project. I've seen Amish schools. I've seen ones that are in Harlan, over between Grable and Harlan. I watched them from when they started moving dirt until they were finished. I've gone into those schools, and if you didn't tell me I was in an Amish school, I wouldn't have known that. So, that's just my feelings. Barriers, yes. You can put up, you can put up certain kinds of barriers, but, I think it has to be within reason. And something that is not going to be a burden on one particular group burden from quite an expense. But at the same time, there's things that can be done as a natural barriers. But anybody else wants to add or take away, whatever, but.
Just a clarification for me, please. Mr. Smucker mentioned there were 292 schools, and Ms. Wellman mentioned that the word typical bothered her, or she was maybe not bothered, but was concerned about the word typical to have the school and cemetery together. Of 292 schools, do you have
Yeah, I mean, so just answer that question if you can, like, technically, the public hearing portion's done, so you shouldn't be asking questions to the board.
okay, I'm sorry.
But if you want a clarification, that's fine.
Yeah.
But
okay?
I don't need we don't need a 5-minute dissertation about this, just, is it typical, common, or not?
Yeah,
But-
that's the only thing I'm having a disconnect here. The word typical versus, 292 schools, what does typical mean? Is that word, can we easily strike that word, to Ms. Wellman's point? Does that matter, I guess,
I mean, these are just my proposed findings.
Yeah.
So you guys can change anything you
Yeah.
want. I think that word typical is what was used when I was meeting with the petitioner.
Oh,
So,
okay, yeah.
What if you
And-
changed it to currently common?
Correct. And one thing that I want to point out too, and Larry, I'd like to know
Sure.
if you feel like, because you were the one that motioned for the continuance.
continuance, yeah.
If this,
It answers most of
Answers
my
most of your
question.
problems and questions.
I'm very deeply appreciative of both groups meeting and having an amicable discussion. I understand there are differences still. The question raised about the word typical, I think we can resolve that, and we should. I think the question about the barriers, and these are good questions, but I don't think there's a quick, easy solution to that other than time. But basically, those are my two points right now. The berms, we discussed the berms. Logistically, it seems, or maybe not logistically, but it seems somewhat difficult to do that on those berms. So, just the wording with typical, and then I think that's the only real question I have right now.
I think under conditions, if we want to add two conditions for approval, the barrier situation is something that everyone needs to come to some sort of an agreement on. And I think we need to have that written in there, where there's trees. You can do a mound and trees, but not again, it has to be within reason. Fast-growing trees, there are those, obviously, and that's a situation where, everybody has to agree on those points. And I think that should be able to be done, so.
Okay.
But we can add that under conditions.
I think that would make sense. It sounds like that everybody agrees there needs to be a barrier. If you're going to grant this, there needs to be a barrier as part of the conditions. I think it would be entirely appropriate and a good idea to put that in there as a condition, that there be barriers. I think you could put in Well, they provided a sheet showing a certain number of things, so, I mean, you could start with that, or you could say, you know, and instead of 2-foot trees, you could probably discuss and see if you could do 6-foot trees or 4-foot trees or what, you know. But put something like that in the condition as a requirement.
Okay. Anyone else comment? Mary?
Just a few comments here. To Mrs. Roth, Janelle Roth. I do live in Concord Township, and I am surrounded by the Amish. What I have found is that they're fairly easy to work with, and they want, they don't want any strife in that. I know it's a changing landscape where we're at, but it's just one of those things that's happening. And again, any issues we've had, they've bent over backwards to rectify. Years ago, I went into the Graybill Amish schools in the early 2000s. I did several dental presentations to them. I went to another school over by Harlan. Nothing but a positive experience with them. And actually, I, you know, very well behaved and quiet and different than what we're used to. I don't feel right denying 100 students an education. So, you know, I do believe the buffer is going to have to be the answer, and we'll go forward with that. I live in the DeKalb Eastern School District, and for over 50 years, 30% of our roads that the buses travel are dirt roads, and that has not changed. So I just wanted to add that in. But as Chris mentioned, that's a highway department and a county commissioner issue, and we're not going to touch that issue. So I think that's all I need to add.
Okay. Anything from you?
If we have them make an agreement, I mean, even if they agree on some combination of berm and landscape buffer, you know, vegetative buffer, that's going to have to go forward to a site plan through drainage board and stuff anyway. Because I don't know what level of berming that we can require or whatever before it has to get engineered through the drainage board.
I don't know that there's, I'm sure there's height requirements from the drainage board for a berm.
We're not the drainage board, so I don't want to put any words in their mouth, but, you know, any of that would have to go through drainage
Yeah.
board, so.
Whereas just planting the trees or shrubs or
Correct.
bushes would not have to go through the
Right.
drainage.
No.
That was my concern with if we put a condition in there that stated there might have to be some kind of berming that's out of our purview. Kind of.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing too, I think you said where like you had trees 10 foot apart, you know, you can make that 6 foot apart. Fast growing trees.
So my suggestion would be, if, to wrap up the conditions part, is that the landscape buffer on the south side be extended to the edge, to the western edge of the softball field. That gives a pretty extensive buffer along that south property line that Mrs. Wellman's neighbor told her she would like to see. I think the buffering, if the Roth family on the north side wants shade trees and they're willing to provide that, that's fine. And I think that to have a clear sight distance, I think how it's designed appears fine. The trees on the east side, I would just want to get before we say that that's the exact location, I'd want this to be just reviewed by the highway department to make sure there's no issues as far as the right-of-way that may be there, if there's any drainage swales or something like that, that they're not planting those in the middle of those. So whether that is a meeting between the highway department, myself, and Jesse and Martin out on site to see where they're gonna go. But I'm fine with the location. I think that the conditions could be easily stated, that the landscape buffer on the east and the south side being planted at a minimum of 8 feet. And the landscape buffer on the north side, those trees be planted at a minimum of 10 foot tall. And then it is in our UDO that any landscape buffer has to be maintained. So it's already in there, but you can add a condition of approval that that they maintain for the life of the project the trees and shrubs on the north, east, and south side. That means that, you know, if we have a drought and a tree dies, or more than one tree dies, they would need to transplant that at a minimum of what your conditions are at. So it'd be at a minimum of 8 feet. That would seem to make the most sense as far as that landscape buffer requirement.
And that's there. You put that down in so many words.
I can repeat it when we get to that point. I wrote it down.
Yes. The important thing is that Meredith and Chris have it, so.
Yeah, okay.
But yes, I do have it in my notes.
Okay.
Just to clarify, Chris, when you were talking feet, you were talking tall or?
Tall.
Okay, all
Yeah,
right.
10 foot, or sorry, yes, 8 foot in height, and then 10 feet in height.
Okay.
Typically, you measure shade trees at like a diameter breast height, so that would probably be at least like a 1.5 or 2 inch caliper, I would think, when you get to that. So you can even state that, or just have them be at a height of 10 feet. I do think they need to be of a taller than a sapling that you get at, you know, the Soil Water District sapling sale. You know, that they are a professionally grown plant to have some impact. And, you know, those arborvitaes, they grow fast, 1 to 2 feet a year. That's fast for a plant. So I think that's fine.
Are we saying there should be specifics in this, or there should be an agreed upon between the two parties plan? We just talked about a lot of
I
details.
think Chris was saying we would put these details just in, and if that's your choice, it's not Chris's decision or mine, but if that's your choice, that would be a way to do it. And Chris is saying that it would be reasonable to require that size of tree, which would deal with some of the neighbors' concerns, you know, in that. They didn't want 2-foot trees for obvious reasons.
But as far as number of trees and that, you're wanting to discuss with the highway department and make sure?
Not the number, the location.
The location,
To make sure
okay.
that.
I'm
yeah,
just
that-
clarifying all
yep,
this.
That there's no issues as far as the
Regards
location.
to setback, correct?
Right.
Okay.
And then everything else that would be on the site plan would be there. So the spacing at 10 feet, so that means they'd be spaced 10 feet apart, and that's not space between them. That's middle of plant to middle of plant is 10 feet apart. Same with the shade trees. They would be spaced at 35 feet apart, which makes sense because shade trees are going to get a pretty big crown on there, and you don't want them, the more they fuss together, the weaker they get, so.
Anyone else, or anything more from any of our board members? Okay. I would entertain a motion.
No.
Well, we need to go through findings first.
Yes.
Okay.
I move we go through the findings.
Yeah.
So if it's okay with you, Mr. President?
Yes.
All right. We have jurisdictional findings. We'll go through the jurisdictional findings first. Application completed and filed on January 5th, 2024.
Yes.
We have legal notice published in the Star on February 2nd, an affidavit given to staff.
Yes.
Certificate of mailing notices sent and receipts given to staff.
Yes.
Letter from the County Health Department dated January 16th.
Yes.
Letter from the County Highway Department dated January 11th.
Yes.
Letter from the County Surveyor or Drainage Board dated January 12th.
Yes.
Letter from the Soil and Water Conservation District dated January 11th.
Yes.
And the letter from the DeKalb County Airport Authority is not applicable. So the next step is we have 5 proposed findings that the state law requires be reviewed for this proposal, for this project. And I'll go ahead and go through that and let anyone that wants to respond, talk about the findings. Hopefully, at least one of you will make some comments on each finding, at least one person. And then at the end, and then I'll go through the proposed conditions. And then when we have a motion, it would be either to approve or disapprove, and if you approve it, to approve it with the findings, if that's what you want, or an amended finding of some type. Anything stated in here by the zoning administrator is just a suggestion and is not binding on any of you. Number 1, will the approval be injurious to the public health, safety, morals, and general welfare of the community? If someone would speak to that.
No, I don't think so. The approval of the school should not be injurious to the community. The cemetery was approved in March of 2022. I was here when we done that. I think it was a good decision, and it's typical for an Amish parochial school or common for the cemetery and school to be on the same property. And so in letters from the county departments, nobody had anything objective.
All right. Number 2, will the use and value of the area adjacent to the property included in the variance be affected in a substantially adverse manner?
I'd say no, the property values adjacent to the property should not be affected negatively. The school year runs similar to English schools. Traffic will be minimal with only 90 students.
All right. We have number 3, does the need arise from some condition peculiar to the property involved?
Yes, the cemetery was approved March 2022, and it is typical or common for an Amish parochial school and cemetery on the same property.
All right, number 4, will the strict application of the Unified Development Ordinance result in an unnecessary hardship if applied to the property for which the variance is sought?
Yes, the cemetery was approved March 22 and is typical. And for the Amish parochial school and cemetery on the same property. Unless the property would be approved for a zone map amendment, there are no other locations in the county for this use.
And then number 5, will the approval interfere substantially with the policies of the county's comprehensive plan?
I'd say no. The purpose should not interfere with the comprehensive plan, provided the petitioner meets the rules, regulations, the county health department surveyor, and our listed conditions. Additionally, the comprehensive plan promotes compatible uses to be near each other. For the Amish community, it appears to be common for an Amish school and a cemetery to be located on the same property. See letters from county highway departments.
Now, these are proposed conditions of approval. Nothing is approved yet until there's a motion one way or the other for approving or disapproving. But these are the proposed conditions. staff recommending the approval, and they recommend the following conditions, plus a few we'll go through that were discussed with the BZA. Number one, the board retains continuing jurisdiction of this use variance to assure compliance with all terms and conditions and/or impose additional conditions deemed necessary for health and safety. Number two, if the BZA were to grant this, then the use variance would be approved for the Amish parochial school. Number three, the petitioner must acquire local permits from the health department for a septic system and the county surveyor or drainage board for a drainage plan. Number four, no off-site drainage, existing surface water, or existing tiled water drainage crossing over said real estate should be obstructed by any development on this site. The Board of Zoning Appeals may enforce these conditions by injunctive relief with attorney fees. Number five, no certificate of occupancy or certificate of completion shall be issued until the applicant files written evidence of compliance with any conditions of the DeKalb County Board of Health, Highway Department, Drainage Board, Surveyor, County Airport, Soil and Water Conservation District, or other agency as applicable. And further, where applicable, file written evidence of compliance with federal or state agencies that were identified in the findings or conditions. The zoning administrator is to determine when conditions have been met. And then, Chris, do you want to try to restate the proposed? I mean, I could, but if you've got them written down, go ahead. The proposed, I guess we would say number 6 and subparts under number 6, perhaps.
That the landscape buffer on the east and south side be planted at a minimum of 8-foot height and spaced per the site plan. A landscape buffer on the north side be planted at a minimum of 10 feet height and spaced per the site plan. Maintain for the life of the project all trees and shrubs on the north, east, and south side. And then I also added for the highway department that the location on the east side to be approved by the highway department. Location of the landscape material, landscaping, whatever.
What about extending the shrubs listed on the site plan to the west side of the softball field? You had said that, I don't know. Okay.
If the board's okay with that, I think that extends that more than half of the property.
Okay. So then it's back to you, Frank, to see if anyone has a motion one way or the other.
I apologize for overlooking the judicial findings. I've done that before. So, having gone through the judicial findings and the proposed findings of facts, and in the conditions that we've added, again, I would entertain a motion to approve or disapprove.
Can I ask one more question? Did we change the word typical to common throughout this where it used?
I'm sorry.
I think that whoever makes the motion should suggest that we change it from wherever typical is used to be common, or currently common.
When they read their findings, they said typical and or common.
I think everybody except maybe one person did, so, yeah.
Okay.
So yes, we're changing it to common.
Okay. I make a motion to approve petition 2402.
Motion's been made to approve. Is there a second?
I second that.
We have a second.
Mary Deal,
Yes?
Jason Carnahan,
Yes.
Larry Williams,
Yes.
Roy Walker,
Yes.
Frank Pulver.
Yes. Pardon me? Yes. We're done.
Well, no, here, new business,
new
and then
business.
reports of planning staff.
Oh, yeah.
New business first.
My new business, none, reports of planning staff, officers, and committees.
Okay. Any, you're talking about any, basically any comments in general on any topic from the public, or, okay, go ahead, Frank.
Yes, do we have any more comments in public?
Just want to clarify on the east side border. As I had stated, I had already contacted the highway department and the required setback is 20 feet. And it looks like on the current site plan that it's not starting for whatever I stated it was. Like, it would need another 110 feet of coverage to match up to that 20-foot setback. And you made the suggestion to go with the current plan, but that's not covering the east side.
I mean, you're talking going further north?
Correct.
Y'all are looking at me for that. That's, the site plan is what was given to me based off of what their meeting they had with the neighbors. So,
But we didn't get it, that was not revised. That was the same site plan, other than adding the shaded
it's
shrubbery.
not the same site plan. This is a different site plan that the BZA got from the last BZA meeting.
But if you match that on the east side to the previous, actually, I think your initial one had 0
Yeah,
border.
that's what I'm saying. The initial one had
Right,
0, and this is
right.
the new site plan that I was given. Based off of-
But that wasn't what we agreed to. We had mentioned that we wanted more trees there. And when I confirmed with the highway department about the 20-foot center setback, that's how I calculated the additional 110 feet.
That doesn't have impact with the intersection?
I don't know. I mean, you guys, I'm telling you that this is what I got based off of what they're telling me that you all agreed on. And you guys are coming here saying you didn't agree on it. So,
Correct, because we
but you
agreed
had
to have a
meeting-
second meeting
Okay, well, I,
prior to tonight. I'm just telling you what we had talked about. So we didn't, you can see, we did not sign that plan because nothing was in concrete at that point, because we were projected to have a second meeting. So that's what I have to add to this conversation. Thank you.
Thank you.
We could ask the petitioners to see if they would be willing to add more shrubs up closer to the intersection on the east side, if acceptable to the highway department.
hearing's over. So
Okay.
You can't make it as a
True.
requirement. You can't make it as a condition of approval. The hearing's over.
Okay.
I think what I would like to say, I'm frustrated. This is frustrating because I'm agreeing with you guys on this one, that it's frustrating that you all had this for a month. You all exchanged phone numbers. I saw you downstairs. If you weren't happy, if you wanted a second meeting, I would have called the next day and said, please have a meeting with us so we can finalize this before the BZA. This was out on the agenda, or on the website for, we put it out on Thursday? So 10 days before the hearing. So there was plenty of time, hold on, please. There was plenty of time to review the site plan, and if you wanted a second meeting, have the second meeting. I mean, I guess I'm frustrated that looks like I'm the bad guy here because I didn't do something, and that's what it feels like coming from this side of the room. So it's really frustrating to me dealing with this, and I'm going to talk to the BZA and Plan Commission about how do we handle these situations? Do I need to start making sure that everyone has signed agreements with neighbors that they're okay with use variances or variance from developmental standards or special exceptions? That's not something we currently require. But having us be the mediator between people who can't compromise just adds to my frustration, and I can tell adds to your frustration as well. I'm looking for guidance from you guys too, and I want to make sure that I'm getting that, because I don't want to be that Chris is, or the zoning administrator, whoever is in this seat, is not promoting this in any way. The petitioners are coming to the BZA, and while I'm helping, the zoning administrator helps with the process, it's not my decision, it's yours. And if you guys hear something and want to see more, by all means, do it. Sorry, seems a little testy on my part, but I'm frustrated.
I understand. I think we all are. We've got all the information that we need. We can't adjust it because we've already, okay. Is there anything else that needs to be addressed?
I think adjournment is next.
Make a motion to adjourn.